Joining us now on Zoom from Washington is United States Senator Ed Markey. Senator, thank you so much for your time.
So great to be with you again.
You
Yes,
too.
thank you very much, Senator, for joining us. So you were on the Senate floor talking about the 100 harms of the first 100 days of the Trump administration. Would you give us the highlights?
Well, the highlights are that they're slashing the funding for research for Alzheimer's and cancer and diabetes and for all of the diseases which run through the genes of every American. And they right now are paralyzing all of that research. They're driving thousands of young researchers out of choosing that kind of research life that really gives hope to families that a cure will be found. And by the way, it's happening all across Massachusetts right now. In our hospitals, in our biotechs, it's increasingly difficult for each one of these major institutions in the Commonwealth to hold on to the next generation of researchers because they can't give a guarantee that the funding will be there so that these young people can choose that vital research as a career.
You know, one of the things I'm guessing, I cannot tell a lie, I didn't see all 100 of the harms you mentioned, but I'm guessing, since you're the ranking Democrat on the Small Business Committee in the Senate, you talked about the plight of small businesses with tariffs, and I'm sure you heard Trump on Meet the Press at the same time that he said he didn't know if he had to uphold the Constitution, the Fifth Amendment due process rights. He was asked by Kristen Welker, well, I'm just asking about small businesses. Are there any discussions about giving any relief to small businesses? Quote from Trump, they're not going to need it. Are they not going to need it, Senator Markey?
Well, right now, I'm being inundated with calls from small businesses all across Massachusetts. We have 730,000 small businesses in Massachusetts. Wow. We're a state of 7 million people. We have 730,000 small businesses. And although Trump might not understand this, 97% of all businesses who engage in trade are small businesses. Mm-hmm. And that represents 30% of all trade with countries around the world. So if you're a big business, you might be able to make it through. You can cut some corners over here and make it through this threat. But if you're a small business, you live week to week, month to month. You can't ride out a storm like this. And what Massachusetts, small businesses are telling me is that we need a complete and total change of direction by the Trump administration, or else we are going to have a catastrophe. We're going to have a liquidation event for small businesses, not just in Massachusetts, but across the country. That is the threat which we are running, which is why I've introduced a bill that would say to Trump that you must give a waiver to all small businesses in the United States of the impact of the tariffs. And I introduced that legislation yesterday. I held the press conference with Chuck Schumer, with Amy Klobuchar, with Tina Smith, and with a whole group of small businesses, including those from Massachusetts, standing behind me.
Not one Republican senator cares about small businesses in their district?
Well, I know a lot of Republicans care about it because the National Chamber of Commerce has asked Donald Trump to give a waiver for small businesses. So you can't get more Republican than the National Chamber of Commerce. And ordinarily, their wish is the command of Republicans. So my hope is that we will be able to find some Republicans who will stand up, because every time they go home, every weekend, they're hearing from their Rotarians, from their Kiwanians, from their local Chamber of Commerce about how devastating these tariffs are to them, how it threatens their very survival. And Congress is a stimulus response institution, and there's nothing more stimulating than people on Main Street talking to you. Not the NASDAQ, not the S&P 500. Though the real businesses that you get to talk to are the ones on Main Street.
Well, Senator Markey, I wonder about what it will take, because we're hearing, I know we're not supposed to be that worried about the stock market, but half of Americans have their retirement savings in the stock market, and they're very shocked about it. But I'm wondering, and Trump's poll numbers are going down, at what point, or if at any point, will the Republicans, at least in the Senate, stand up to the president as these businesses do suffer? Because from what I've read, some of them could be gone in a matter of weeks because they're so dependent on their imports from China.
Or their
No,
exports.
that's the still unanswerable question. On Sunday night, I was at the Kennedy Library for the awarding of the Profiles of Courage Award to Vice President
Yeah.
Pence for what he did on January 6th. And he showed true courage. So my hope is this. There are Republicans of conscience. We just have to hope that they turn into Republicans of courage. And I think that this tariff issue is something that is ultimately going to weigh very heavily upon Republicans because that's their principal constituency. It's the National Federation of Independent Businesses. It's the Chamber of Commerce. That's who the Republican Party represents most significantly. And right now, they're in revolt against Donald Trump. They're in revolt against Lutnick and all of these advisors, which he has on this trade war. And I can't for sure predict the moment when it's going to happen, but I think that it definitely is something that is going to weigh very heavily upon them, especially as each week and month go by and Wall Street and others predict a coming recession, because the ones that get hurt the most are the people who own businesses on Main Street all across our country.
You know, Senator Markey, if we can be just self-centered just for a second, Marjorie and I have applied for 2 barista jobs in Malden. We're hoping you can give us a recommendation if this NPR thing doesn't work out. Obviously, you know what's going on with NPR and PBS. Our boss, Susan Goldberg, was here the other day to talk about the response to this. We keep asking the same question. It's almost like the tariff, the small business question. Virtually every red state district is dependent upon a PBS or NPR station, which in many cases is the only broadcast station that's available to their constituents. Is it possible that federal funding for both, for the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, could disappear?
It's possible if, again, Republicans of conscience don't stand up. Republicans of courage don't stand up. I just ran down from the hearing that I was just in at 11:45 today, talking about the cuts to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, to NPR and to PBS. I just ran over from the hearing.
Thank you for that.
Just cross-examining the witnesses on that issue. It's absolutely something that Newt Gingrich and George W. Bush each made a top priority. And in each instance, we were able to find Republicans to partner with in order to save these institutions. And if you just take PBS, if you take WGBH, you know, from 6 in the morning all day, it's just the children's television network. It's all the programming that for 2 generations, every parent in Greater Boston has put their children in, regardless of race, regardless of income. It's invaluable and it's free. That's the key. It is free to every one of those parents. And every child has been a beneficiary of that. And there's no exception, not only in Greater Boston, but all across our nation. So in addition to that, the NPR networks, let's just say in the most rural parts of Maine or South Dakota, they are where people go in order to get their news, in order to get their entertainment, because that network goes out to where commercial stations can't find enough advertisers to have the station be able to put on those kind of high quality programs. So historically, that's been the coalition. Last week, I sent a letter with Senator Murkowski, Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, on these issues. I've always tried to make this fight bipartisan. I've always led the fight to save CPB, to save PBS, to save NPR. That's been something I've been doing for decades. And right now, I'm working very hard in order to find Republican colleagues who understand this. But I also encourage the listeners in the most rural parts of the country to be calling your senators, be calling your House members, so that you tell them how valuable this is. They are being inundated on cuts to Medicaid. they should also be inundated on cuts to NPR, on cuts to PBS. So that's that's definitely something which people can't agonize. They've got to organize. This is an executive order that does not trump the appropriations of the House and Senate. So we're going to need House and Senate members to stand up and to vote to keep the funding for this incredible, valuable public media that has served generations of Americans so well.
We're talking to the United States Senator from Massachusetts, Ed Markey.
You know, Senator Markey, we know you and Ayanna Pressley because Rumeysa Ozturk is in the Congresswoman's district. You were down there as well with her. She's a Tufts doctoral student who was disappeared off the street and sent to a detention center in Louisiana.
Jim McGovern was there, too.
And that's right, Jim McGovern. We're going to speak about Jim McGovern more in a minute. But tell us what it was like to see her. I know the conditions are bad. She's had asthma attacks, talking about being too cold to sleep at night, not enough blankets. What was it like?
Well, first, she has a great spirit. She is behind barbed wire in a prison in the remotest part of Louisiana. The goal that the Trump administration has is to whisk students off of the streets of Massachusetts, and in this instance, moved her to Vermont and eventually took her down to Louisiana. She was dressed in an orange jumpsuit. She told us how originally they wouldn't even let her wear her hijab so that she would be able to be dressed as the fervent Muslim, which she is. But she told us a very disturbing story, and it was the number of asthma attacks that she's had already. She told us of how they put her originally in handcuffs and then in shackles to move her down to Louisiana. She told us about how when the women, there's 1,000 women in this prison in remote Louisiana, how at night when they ask for extra blankets, they don't receive them. When people, when some of these prisoners or detainees, as they call them, ask for special foods because of their religion, they don't receive them in a timely fashion. When they need medical attention, they don't receive the medical attention in a timely fashion. So this is a woman that truly is inspiring in terms of what she's responding to. And it all went back to an op-ed that she wrote in the Tufts newspaper, which is her First Amendment right. What she's being denied as well is her Fifth Amendment rights. So there was a court case just this morning, it just ended in the Second Circuit Court of Appeals in New York, which covers Vermont. And the case just was heard, and her lawyers made the case that she should be sent back to Vermont. And so my hope is that those judges will act promptly in order to get her out of that prison and back to Vermont and then hopefully released so that she can return to her family and her friends on the Tufts campus.
You know, Senator Markey, Marjorie mentioned that when you went to that Louisiana prison, you were joined by two of your colleagues, Ayanna Pressley and Jim McGovern. Congressman McGovern has been on the show many times. He's a person, I believe, of great principle. About a week or so ago, we read a horrible story about the death of his daughter, Molly, who was in her young 20s, just unimaginable loss. Did you happen to know the congressman's daughter?
Yeah, and Jim, of course, got the news on the day that Congresswoman Pressley and I returned from Louisiana.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And when we were with these women in their cells, Jim was saying to the mothers who were imprisoned how much he identified with them, and because of his own children. So he kept raising his love of his children and how much he knew those women loved their children and did not want to be separated. And by the way, there were pregnant women that we were meeting with as well who should not be in that facility. Ayanna kept raising that issue. absolutely passionately. So I knew Molly as a young girl. I went to the funeral on Saturday in Worcester. This is a great family, and she was just an incredible young woman, a woman who just inspired everyone that she ever met in her entire life. Uh, Jim McGovern gave one of the most incredible eulogies I've ever heard in my entire life, but so didn't his wife, and so didn't their son Patrick. They each just delivered a riveting message about the life of Molly and all that she meant to the entire community and everyone that she had ever met. So it was just, especially given where Jim and Ayanna had just been with these mothers who separated from their children. It was just one of the most powerful experiences that I've ever had. And Bill Clinton came. He was there. Nancy Pelosi was there. Elizabeth Warren and I, our delegation, we sat there. But Worcester was there, and other parts of her life where she had gone to school in Massachusetts. They were all there as well to honor this great young woman.
Yeah, she had a very rare form of cancer, as I understand, and there were complications involved. Yeah.
So, Senator, this morning's Globe says Marty Walsh, former mayor of Boston, former labor secretary, now he's got something to do with hockey, making $4 million a year, not that we're jealous, said the Democrats don't have a message. The Globe also reports 30 city or town Democratic committees are very angry. The Democrats are not fighting enough. Specifically, some of them singled out the fact that Chuck Schumer is still the leader of the Democrats in the Senate, and they criticized him for going along with making sure the Republican budget plan a month or so ago had enough votes to pass. You did not join Leader Schumer in that vote. How do you respond to Walsh and the Democratic committees about what they consider to be the weakness of Democrats in office?
And by the way, thank you for pointing it out. I voted no.
I know
on
that.
that continuing resolution. I disagreed with Chuck Schumer on that. But Marty Walsh, no one better, always has his finger on the pulse of the people. And so this weekend, twice, I went over to Dempsey's on the Malden-Medford line to have breakfast while I was up there, just listening to people at Dempsey's, this breakfast place that I go to. And at the same time, I went to another half a dozen events in Massachusetts, listening to people as they are really expressing incredible concern about what the Trump administration is doing. So Marty is right. If we listen to the people, they will lead us. That's why it was so heartening to me when 100,000 people showed up on Boston Common and at the Boston City Hall Mall for the Hands Off rally, which I led walking down Tremont Street and spoke at that rally. It's so critical that we have people coming out to town meetings as well. I had one with 1,500 people in Malden just 3 weeks ago. There was no room. We had to go to 2 overflow rooms and move more television sets into it. So the people are speaking. They don't want Medicaid to be cut. 50% of all children in the United States.
But if I may interrupt, Marty Walsh's message is not that Trump is horrible. His message is that your fellow Democrats are not fighting hard enough. Do you agree with that message as well?
Well, you have to. Well, I would say you have to do both. You have to listen to the people, and you have to fight hard. Now, according to all of the polls, he is now down to 40% favorability. Mm-hmm. It's a start, but there's a lot more work to do, a lot more fight to do, which is why I brought out the amendment, no cuts to Alzheimer's research, and made all the Republicans vote no. It's why I brought out the amendment on the Senate floor saying you cannot disconnect the phones at the Social Security Administration, making it almost impossible for grandma and grandpa to call in to get their benefit. So I'm fighting every single day on the floor of the United States Senate. And I'm also going around the state, listening to and trying to rally people to this fight. So we need to help lead it. We need young people to read it. We need an uprising at the grassroots all across our country to help lead this. That's what 5051 is doing.
Yeah.
That's what Indivisible is doing. They're the ones that put on this incredible march just 3 weeks ago, in the beginning of April in Boston. And Marty Walsh, as usual, is right. He knows how to get this done, and that's what I'm trying to do every single day.
And you want to keep doing it. You're running for re-election. Are you too old to run for re-election and serve 6 more years, Ed Markey?
Well, I'm like Paul McCartney. I just keep rocking 8 days a week.
Yeah, a lot of people say you're like Paul McCartney I've spoken to. Go ahead.
So, yeah, this is the most energized I've ever been. This fight is bringing out the Malden in me. It's bringing out the fight for all these programs that affect communities like Malden. As I was saying, 50% of all children in America are on Medicaid. 50% of all children in America will be on SNAP, supplemental nutrition, at some point in their life. The cuts to Title I education funding, that's Malden. The cuts to the funding for special education for the kids that have disabilities, that's Malden. But it's every community. But disproportionately, it's going to hit those blue-collar and poorer communities. So that's what gets me up. That's what gets me into this fight every single day. It's the most energized I've ever been, because Trump is trying to destroy that opportunity ladder for the entire next generation of Americans. And yeah, they're disproportionately black and brown and poorer, but I'm fighting against Trump every day. That's my priority, and I do it to represent those who are going to be most harmed by his policies,
Well,
and not allow the funding to go to millionaires and billionaires.
Senator Markey, before you go, you also have been fighting hard for something that is near and dear to Jim Braude's heart.
That is
He has
correct.
been crusading along with you to make daylight saving time permanent, and now, out of the blue, I didn't know that President Trump felt so strongly about this. Apparently, he wrote on Truth Social that we should stop changing the clocks, big inconvenience for our government, and a very costly event. So,
Love that guy.
So maybe, exactly. Could Donald Trump be the person that finally gets daylight saving time permanent across the line? What do you think?
As you know, when it passed 2 years ago on the Senate floor, it was Rubio, Markey.
That's right.
Who got it passed.
That's right.
It was the Bay State
Extending
and
it.
the Sunshine State. So
Yep.
we aligned on this. Now, I have disagreed with almost everything that Marco Rubio has done since he took over as Secretary of State. He's almost become a mini Trump in his foreign policy. But maybe, just maybe, on daylight savings time, he was able to have dawn break over Marblehead here and have the president finally understand how important daylight savings time is. So the more daylight we have is the more fun we have. The corners of your mouth turn upwards with a little bit of a smile when that sun is out after you get home from work. So that's something, but maybe Donald Trump and I, even though I'm not a golfer, maybe we can convince him to have more time away from Washington, just golfing out there at Mar-a-Lago and all the other resorts that he has. But maybe that's the one redeeming thing that Marco Rubio has done. Not cutting funding for USAID, not saying he's going to take over the Panama Canal, but daylight savings time.
So will you do me a favor, Senator? Say hello to Ringo for us, will you? Will you see him? Senator
Love
Markey,
you guys.
thanks for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank
Ed
you
Markey.
very much for being with us.
Thank you very much.